Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today we are doing a power rankings for VCT Masters Madrid. So we're going to be ranking all these teams based off of how good I think their chances are at winning this tournament. I did my last video on Madrid where I went through each team, talking about if each team has a chance to win, and now we're going to rank how I feel about each team's chances. And just a disclaimer before we start, I know that these rankings are probably going to end up being quite wrong. This is the first international event in quite some time where it seems like it's completely wide open. We have a lot of new teams entering the fray, and it's nearly impossible to actually rank these teams based off of regions, because we haven't seen these regions fight against each other this year yet, but this will be the first showcase of it, so we're just going to do our best to predict it. So please keep the comments civil, and if you disagree with me, that's fine. I don't care. That is absolutely your right, and I welcome good discussion, but I just hope that we can keep it as civil as possible and not just hurl insults. But we will see. I've been called brain dead many a times. Starting off the list at number 8, we are starting with one of the Chinese teams in FPX. So when it comes to the China region, I don't know if this is really the year for them. I do think Edward Gaming have a solid team there, but I don't know if I see them being quite good either, and FPX I do think is worse than that team. So it just naturally just kind of makes sense for them to be at the bottom here, because I think unfortunately China is the worst region and they are the lesser of the two at that region. So maybe they surprise some people and end up having an upset victory here and there, but I don't know if I see their chances as that great right now. I think China still has a long way to go. So I did kind of want to put Edward Gaming higher. I think there are some really good pieces to that roster. Kane is an absolute stud, and they have been able to have some pretty impressive upset victories at the international level. Most notably at Masters Tokyo, EDG did upset Loud, I believe. So they've been able to surprise some better teams, but I do think teams in other regions are probably going to be a bit more ready for them this time. Now that they're a bit more established, and I still don't think China has the talent to really have a tournament contender, unfortunately, I just see EDG's chances as not that good. But I do hope that they surprise me. China being the newest league, hopefully they do well. It'd be good for Riot, so we'll see how that goes. Moving on to number 6, this is definitely where the decision making got quite hard for me. I have Gen G at number 6. So if you notice, Gen G is below the team that they beat, Paper X, to take that grand final in the Pacific playoffs in the kickoff event. And yes, they beat Paper X, but I tried to think of how I'm really going to weigh that victory. They get those championship points. They do get the rematch victory on Paper X after Paper X beat them earlier in the bracket. Paper X maybe not as good as they were last year. Gen G absolutely having a solid roster this year after their inconsistent year last year. Texture's looking good. Karen's looking like a great addition. Lakia as well, Meteor, Munchkin. This is a really good roster. But in terms of play at an international level against all the other regions, I still see Paper X's chances better than theirs, because Paper X does have that experience and does have some really top players in the world. So while Gen G did get the better of them, and I'm not trying to take away from them in that victory, Paper X, they're not always the best at grand finals, as we know, but I still see Paper X's chances better than theirs, and unfortunately I have some other teams above them in other regions as well. So Gen G, they could surprise me, and I do hope a Pacific team does well. I think it's good for the game if the Pacific region gets better and starts dominating, but for now, in my head, I couldn't justify them being higher than 6. So apologies to Gen G fans, but I do think this roster is pretty good. Moving on to number 5, we have Team Heretics, the runners-up in the EMEA League. So Team Heretics was definitely one of the more surprising teams in the VCT kickoff events to me. I ranked them last in my power rankings for the EMEA League in the preseason. That ended up being a huge mistake. They ended up being some pretty good teams in Foot Esports. They did beat Carmine Corp. They did lose the rematch against them in the grand final, but they also beat Na'Vi in pretty convincing fashion as well. So I definitely don't see Na'Vi as good as they were in the past, so I didn't put that as much weight as I do with Carmine Corp beating Fnatic. But Heretics, they look solid. They have some good rookies on there. Mini Boo is looking fantastic, and I'm hopefully he does really well at this tournament. But I do think that some of these teams that have a lot of rookies on them might end up kind of falling to some of the more experienced teams. But we will see, because Valorant, it's changed as a game since last year, and Heretics, they are on home turf as well. They are a Spanish organization, so then at Madrid, they might get a home ground buff. So we'll see how it goes. I think they can do some damage, but I just thought that the other 4 teams that I have above them probably have the better chance. Which brings me to Paper X, which I feel like I'm a lot higher on this team than most people are at this point. And I understand why. Plat Chat's pretty low on them. They had them 7th. I know they did like a coin cost to see which team was above with them and EDG. I personally think they're much better than EDG. I know they don't have Jane anymore. That is a big loss. Monyet The results have been mixed so far, but he still is a very talented player. He was really good on Global Esports last year, despite that team being terrible. I think this team is still absolutely a tournament contender. I do put them in the top half of these power rankings. They still have Forsaken, they still have Devi. Something is incredible. And I think that they're still an extremely talented team that, they're so close. They've been so close to an international title twice now. They've been to 2 grand finals. They started last year rough, and then they came back and almost won Tokyo even. They got pretty close. They were number 3, I believe. They just didn't have something, and then they almost won champion. So this team, I feel like a championship, it's coming. It feels like it's coming. I know Jane's gone. I don't know if this team wins without Jane. Maybe if Jane comes back next year after he serves his military service, maybe they have a better chance then. But in terms of just how wide open this tournament is, I think Paper X, despite losing to Gen G, I do think that their experience and just what they've done in the past puts them above on these power rankings for me personally. But, if this team still had Jane and if they beat Gen G, they'd probably be top 3. But that loss did drop them down, in my opinion. So, again, I'm hoping this team does well. I want Pacific to win a tournament this year. Paper X still think they have the best chance for now. Moving on to the top 3 teams, starting with the Brazilian superstars in Loud. So Loud is still one of the top teams in the world, despite losing Aspas. They didn't seem like they skipped a beat at all. They did adjust their game a bit and played a bit safer. They're very strong on their defense sides, and they do have a pretty deep map pool and have some very interesting kind of wacky comps there that help surprise teams. They adapt really well. They have Sadak. They have Les. Quick is looking good so far. And this roster is still, in my opinion, a top 3 tournament contender. They did have that loss to Sentinels in the grand finals. They did almost bring it back, so I probably could have put them above Sentinels based off of experience and based off of how they, did beat them at the start of the tournament. But overall, Sentinels, I did think were playing better throughout kickoff, and Loud, they still are top 3, and I didn't want to drop them below that just because they had one loss in the grand final that they almost brought back. So Loud, I definitely see them winning a tournament this year. I don't know if it's this one, and I don't know if the losing Aspas, while it doesn't look like they have, just completely fallen off because of that, it still might be a factor in facing some of these teams with top talent in the world, not having that, just insane superstar. I think Les, extremely good player, probably top 10 in the world as well, especially on that Viper, but it still will be an uphill battle for Loud. Them being underdogs now, I think, is working to their advantage. It did at the start of kickoff, so I think this team is going to be really dangerous. We'll see how it goes. So now we have our top 2 teams in Carmine Corp and Sentinels. Which one is 1 and which one is 2? This has been quite the debate for a while. It seems like these 2 teams are pretty locked in by most people as the favorites to win. Plat Chat having them tied. I think they actually had Sentinels at number 1 first, and then they decided to just do like a little tie thing where they just like stretched each of them over 1 and 2. I'm not going to do that personally. Both teams look fantastic. Both teams won their kickoff events. Who do I see being number 2? I'm putting Sentinels. So the thing about Sentinels is I am quite high on this roster right now. Them winning kickoff was a very impressive performance. For my America's post-kickoff power rankings, I did have Sentinels at number 1. And I think that this team is firing on all cylinders. John QT looking like one of the best IGLs in the world. Zekin looking like one of the best duelists in the entire world. And just their overall roster construction looking very solid at this point. But overall, do I see them winning Madrid? Do I see them being better than Carmine Corp, who did beat Fnatic, probably with the best team in the world last year? I don't know if this is the tournament that they do it, but I do think that their chances are very strong. But, just in terms of who Carmine Corp faced and how they beat the teams that they did versus how Sentinels did it as well, pretty similar. Both teams going through the play-in rounds and then winning in the grand finals. So it was really hard, and it's super close for me, these 2 teams. I just ended up thinking Carmine Corp maybe are a little bit better. Which of course brings us to Carmine Corp at your number 1 spot. This team looks so dangerous. Not only did they have the rematch win against Heretics when Heretics beat them earlier in the bracket, they end up beating Fnatic in an insane upset match. Not only beating Fnatic, but beating Fnatic on their best map in Lotus. They looked fantastic, and I do think Sentinels, most of the map pools that they had in their matches were kind of favoring them. They played Sunset a lot, they played Split a lot, 2 maps that they are very good on, so we don't really fully know how their map pool is to this point, because they do have some losing records on some maps, whereas Carmine Corp played much more of a variety of maps and looked insane on all of them. So they have one of the best coaches in the world in Ain. They have some really top talents. They have some players that look like maybe they're going to be the top in the world at their role. They still have a lot of rookies on their team, so I do question their experience level, but overall, I think this team's incredibly dangerous, and right now, I think they're the favorites to win. I do think Sentinels are extremely close. Same with Loud. I think Loud is very close to both of the top two teams, but overall, I see Carmine Corp being the favorites. Let me know what you guys think of these rankings down in the comment section down below. Do you think I'm right? Do you think I'm horribly wrong? Let me know. Let me know your own rankings as well. Please click like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.